is going on, everybody, and welcome back to Storm the Field with DJ. I am DJ, and we are here to recap week 4 of the college football season. But before we do any of that, make sure you drop a like on this video, subscribe down below if you like my content. As well as making recap videos on each college football week, I also make preview videos for the top 3 games of the week, as well as games on the Miami Hurricanes and the Oregon Ducks. I make final thoughts videos for the Miami Hurricane and Oregon Duck matchups. I also make highlight reactions to the top 3 games of the week, and I also give you guys college football pick'ems each week. So if you guys want to see content like that, make sure to subscribe down below. And yeah, let's get into this recap. All right, so the first game we wanted to talk about, and the one that we talked about first in our last week's preview video, was between the number 16 ranked at the time Utah Utes and the number 17 ranked at the time Texas Tech Red Raiders. Now, if you guys saw my reaction video to this, it was a pretty insane game. Texas Tech, at halftime it was 10-3 for Texas Tech. And again, you can see it right here. 7 points first quarter, 3 points by both teams in the second. Nothing scored in the third, and then once it got to the fourth, oh my God, Texas Tech took over. And I think Texas Tech may have found a new starting quarterback. Baron Morton did not play well at all. 12 of 19 for 142 and 2 interceptions. But then Will Hammond came in and took care of business for the Red Raiders. 13 of 16 for 169 and 2 touchdowns. This kid played insane for his first start, or I believe his first game at the collegiate level. Devin Tempier had a all right game. Not the best. 25 of 38 for 162. 2 interceptions. But he also did rush 11 times for 27 yards. So played pretty well. You also have to include the sacks that he took in these numbers. I do believe that ESPN does count those. Um, Again, other than Devin Napier, Naquai Rogers was the biggest rusher for the Utes. 10 carries for 37 yards. They were really not able to run the ball that efficiently. Washawn Parker is the only player to score a touchdown for the Utes, and that was also on the ground. Now for the Red Raiders, Will Hammond, of course, ran 8 carries, 61 yards. He is a decent dual threat quarterback, but Cameron Dickey really stole the show, 13 carries for 67 yards and 2 touchdowns in this game. The receiving side, this guy really surprised me. Terrence Carter Jr. had some great catches in this game. 7 receptions for 49 yards and a touchdown. Reggie Virgil also had a very good game. 6 receptions for 72 yards and a touchdown. Jacoby Williams, 2 receptions for 71 yards. And as you can see right here, he had a 73-yard reception, so he had 1 of 73 yards and 1 of -2. Caleb Douglas, pretty decent game. 4 receptions for 68 yards. Dickey also did decent on the receiving side, 3 for 20. Now looking at the Utah side of it, Bentley, 6 receptions for 75 yards. Ryan Davis having a good game with 10 receptions for 70. And those are the main 2 receivers that Utah really used. No one else really got a significant amount of receptions or targets for the Utes. There were a lot of fumbles in this game. Again, if you saw my reaction, this was a turnover fest throughout the game. Obviously, you see each team had 2 interceptions plus 3 fumbles each. Or 2 fumbles? Yeah, 2 fumbles. All right. Look, there was 4 fumbles in total plus 4 interceptions. There was 8 turnovers in this game. It was a turnover fest. The only one being for Texas Tech was by Morton on a sack. It was recovered for them, luckily. Ryan Davis on a run actually lost a fumble. Warshawn Parker also on a run lost a fumble. And Devin Dampier on a he also lost one, but was eventually recovered on a bad pitch. Looking at the defensive side, man, Texas Tech really looked like they were all over um, Utah's defense. They were not able to really run the ball well or really do much of anything well. Um, Texas Tech having 2 TFLs. Nate Ritchie for Utah having 2.5 on his own. They had 9 total TFLs. Um, Yet still weren't able to do much on this game. Again, each team having 2 interceptions. Pollock had a pretty impressive one-handed interception. And was it one of these two had a good interception that bounced off the receiver before they caught it in the as the third party. But yeah, this game was very interesting to watch. Believe Texas Tech is now up to number 12 in the country, so they have moved up in the rankings. Utah has moved down and out of the rankings for this week. But yeah, let's get into the next matchup. All right, so the next game we did talk about was the Jackson Arnold revenge game between the Auburn Tigers and the Oklahoma Sooners. Also react to this one. Pretty good game. Close throughout. Oklahoma ended up pulling away with it. Um, they actually won it basically off of safety, so which was pretty fun to watch. Jackson Arnold 21 to 32 for 220 yards and a touchdown, not bad at all. Mateer still looking like the Heisman front runner. 24 for 36, 271 and 1 touchdown. But my last statement may be a little incorrect, as you'll see in the next game. Um, Jeremiah Cobb on good rushes for Auburn, 6 for 61. Malcolm Simmons taking the only rush he had into the end zone. Jackson Arnold, 20 carries for negative 11 yards. Again, I'm guessing that that's including sacks. As you can see here, Oklahoma's defense was eating in the sack department. They had 9 total sacks in this game. Very impressive by this Oklahoma defense. Mateer also did have his own rushing touchdown. He had 10 carries in total. Baylock played pretty well. 11 carries for 13 yards. Um, Now we gotta look at this receiving stats, because these were very pass-heavy offenses. So Cam Coleman, 3 receptions for 88 yards and a touchdown. Very good game for him. Eric Singleton, 9 receptions for 60 yards. Malcolm Simmons, 4 receptions for 30 yards. Damari Alston, 3 receptions for 24 yards. And Horatio Fields, having 2 receptions for 18. All of these guys averaged over 5 yards a catch, which is not bad by any means, man. But now we get to the real star of the show for this receiving game, and that's Satania. Holy! Isaiah Satania the third is a beast. He is a dog on that field. He had some amazing catches. 9 receptions for 127 yards and a touchdown. Kanik, 4 receptions for 62 yards. Deion Burks had another decent game. 6 receptions for 40 yards. Keontez Lewis, 2 receptions for 29 yards. Troy Baylock, had 2 receptions for 10. And Carrion had 1 reception for 3 yards. Mateer did end up fumbling once this game, so that kind of hurts his Heisman stocking a bit, as he does now have a turnover on that himself. Looking again, this was a very good defensive game for Oklahoma. Jalen Jackson, 2.5 sacks. That is a very impressive stat for one player to have. But what's even more impressive is that Mason Thomas also had 2 sacks. You have multiple players on this team with multiple sacks in a singular game against a top 25 opponent. That's pretty special, man. That is pretty special. Yeah. Nothing really happened on punt returns. Kicks were all right. Uh, so yeah, let's head into the final matchup before we talk about the Ducks or the Canes. Now, this game between the Illinois Fighting Illini and the Indiana Hoosiers may be the biggest shock the college football world will see this year. Not because the outcome was unexpected. I believe Indiana was favored to win this game. But because of how big the outcome difference was, a 63-10 win against a top 10 opponent, Indiana moves into the top 15. They are one spot away from being top 10. And remember how I said Matier may no longer be the Heisman frontrunner? It's because this man may have taken that front spot. Fernando Mendoza, the transfer from Cal, 21 of 23 on this game, 267 yards, 5 touchdowns to 0 interceptions. This man played out of his mind this game. He was amazing in this game. Luke Altmaier had a decent game. 14 of 22 for 146 and a touchdown, so not the worst. Looking at the rushing side, Illinois could not do anything on the rush. They did not have a single player over 20 rushing yards. On the opposite side, though, Kobe Martin, 12 carries for 107 yards and 2 touchdowns. Kalen Black, 10 carries for 89 yards and a touchdown. Roman Hemby, 14 carries for 65 yards. They had 3 different players over 50 yards compared to Indiana having none over 20. This really shows the dominance that this Indiana team had over Illinois this week. Colin Dixon was the leading receiver in this game. 4 receptions for 86 yards and a touchdown for them, including a 59-yard grab. Hudson Clement, again, you could see why Illinois struggled. They only have 1 receiver over 50 yards in the entire game. Usually, not a big issue if you run the ball well, but when you're not doing either, you could expect a very low score for your team like they did here. Cole Rusk, 2 receptions for 21 yards. Hank Beatty, 2 receptions for 13 yards. He did not do very much. But now we look at the Indiana receiving. Surratt, 9 receptions for 92 yards and 2 touchdowns. Omar Cooper Jr., 6 receptions for 78 yards and a touchdown, including a very impressive touchdown, of course, in the end zone. Riley Nowosicki, 1 reception for 43 yards and a touchdown, a very deep bomb for him. E.J. Williams, 3 receptions for 17 yards and a touchdown. And Roman Hemby also had 2 receptions for 37 yards. Really shows how good this Indiana offense played. When you have 2 different guys over 50 yards and 4 different receivers with a touchdown. Defensively, no one fumbled the ball. But you're going to see a very big difference right here. Indiana had 7 sacks in the game with 2 different players having 2 themselves. Tyreek Tucker had 2, and Mario Landino had 2. Pretty big deal when you have 2 players with 2 sacks in a single game, and that's just 2 of them. You also have Isaiah, one of my favorite players now, Isaiah Bones Jones, with a sack as well very early on in the game. Rolisha Hardy, a sack as well. And it's Delay and Wyatt had half a sack each. Looking at this, Barna and Lowry Jr. were the only players to have sacks for the Illini. Amari Farrell ends up picking off the Illini's backup quarterback, Ethan Hampton. And yeah, the kicking, obviously nothing really special. But we did have a punt return touchdown in this game as well. D'Angelo Pons returned a 33-yarder for... Wait. 1 punt for 33 yards. And as long as it was 22. And he had a touchdown. You know what? That's whatever. I just know that he had a punt return touchdown that was pretty good. But yeah, let's get into the Civil War. All right, let's get into the Civil War here. I was at this game. Very fun game to go to. I really enjoyed myself. It was scary in the first half. It was. It looked like Oregon State may pull off the upset. They were pretty good at stopping Oregon's offense, and their offense was moving the ball decent. Malik Murphy, looking at the stats, you wouldn't think so. 5 of 18 for 68 yards. He did not do anything through the air, while Dante Moore, 21 of 31 for 305 yards and 4 touchdowns. Again, looking like a Heisman candidate. Jalen Lamar, 12 carries for 70 yards with a very good run of 22. Dante Moore with another good run of 28 yards. He had 7 carries for 53 yards. Jordan Davison having the only rushing touchdown on the Ducks, as we did also sit Noah Whittington this week. Hopefully resting him for Penn State. Hopefully he has fully recovered. He's just resting for Penn State this week. Uh, Malachi Hughes. One of the things I asked for was to see more Malachi Hughes, and we definitely did. He had 6 carries for 33 yards, which is not bad by any means. Malachi Hughes. Daquan Riggs, 5 carries for 31 yards. Derry Hill Jr., not as many yards as he had against Northwestern, but still good yardage with 5 yards for 5 carries for 27 yards. Again, Oregon State cannot move the ball. 14 carries for 38 yards and a touchdown. Anthony Hankerson is the only player to cross the 20-yard mark for the Oregon State rushing stats. And on this, without a single receiver over 50 yards, Oregon State neither. They only had 7 completions in the game, which is a very low amount of completions. Not completions. Yeah, amount of completions. Taz Reddix, 27 yards on 2 receptions. Bryce Caulfield, 2 receptions for 21 yards. Davis Wells, 2 receptions for 19 yards. And Anthony Hankerson, 1 reception for 13 yards. The Oregon receiving was very good this game. Gary Bryant Jr., 3 receptions for 61 yards and a touchdown. DeCorian Moore, 3 receptions for 63 yards and a touchdown. Kenyon Sadiq, 4 receptions for 60 yards and a touchdown. Malik Benson did not have a touchdown this game, but still played very well. 3 yards for 40, 3 receptions for 40 yards. I actually got a picture with Malik. I am very regretful. Malik, if you're watching this, I wanted to say this when we met. Fuck the Gators. Jalen Lamar, 2 receptions for 22 yards. Jamari Johnson, 2 receptions for 21 yards. And then Jeremiah McClellan, 3 receptions for 14 yards, but he had his receiving touchdown. Oregon also had a fumble recovery after Jabari Johnson fumbled the ball. Bear Alexander was able to recover it for Oregon. Oregon in this game had 0 sacks and still managed to play this well. They had 47 total tackles, 13 solo tackles, so that's like looking defensively, this was not a very good game. You had 3 passes defended. You had 2 TFLs. You had 13 tackles, and you had 47 total tackles. You think you would lose this game, especially when Oregon State had 86, 42, 1, and 4. And yet, Oregon dominated this game. Tuioti having a 1.5 TFLs. Mateo only having 1 total tackle was a little bit disappointing. I would have liked to see him get more. But yeah, we also had a decent punt return by Gary Bryant and one by DeCorian Moore. Sapp, of course, perfect on his extra points and field goals. And on the punt, Ferguson Reynolds, pretty good. We also did have a good fake punt. This is what this is. This run by James Ferguson Reynolds was a fake punt. It was actually a pretty good fake punt. It went for 21 yards, of course. It was good. We only had to punt for 87 yards, while Oregon State had 427 yards punting. So, looking at the defensive stats, it looks like Oregon State would have dominated, but no. This game was all Ducks. And the Ducks now next week take on the Penn State Nittany Lions in Happy Valley. This is going to be a matchup that really determines probably the outcome of the Big Ten. whichever team loses this game is going to have one Big Ten loss, and that may be too little or too much to go into the Big Ten championship. Of course, Ohio State may have one loss by the end of the season too to a Big Ten school, probably Michigan. Um, but yeah, let's get into the final game, the first game of the Florida Cup. You want to talk about scary? Oh my God, this game was scary. In the moment, this was one of the scariest games I think I would ever have seen. In the third quarter, specifically. First quarter, Miami dominated. Their first drive was a touchdown drive with a ending run to Chamar Brown Jr. Marty Brown had a very good game, 18 carries for 80 yards. Mark Fletcher also had a very good game, 24 carries for 116 yards, each of those having at least a touchdown. Chamar Brown having two respectively, and Mark Fletcher having one. Um, Now, the reason this was scary, Miami scored 13 points in the first half. Not bad, especially against a good power four opponent. Um, it's pretty good. Florida's defense is good. I cannot deny it. So, playing well and scoring 13 points against their offense in the first half was not bad. It got scary when Florida scored their 7. They started to look like they had momentum, and as soon after they scored, Carson Beck threw his interception. Why wasn't the first quarter scary? We only scored 13. Well, it's because of our defense. Miami's defense in the first quarter allowed a total of 1 first down and 32 yards in the first half. Not the first quarter. My mistake. In the first half, they allowed 32 yards and 1 first down. I saw a stat today. Miami had more rushing yards and passing yards than Florida's entire offense had. They had more yards on rushing alone or on passing alone than the entire Florida team. This Miami defense is legit. Ruben Bain obviously is still a beast. Um, let's talk quarterbacks here. DJ Lagway, not the best game. Um, 12 completions for 23 yard or 12 completions on 21. Ah, 12 completions on 23 attempts, 61 yards, no touchdowns. QBR was terrible for this game. Carson Beck, Heisman stock definitely dropped after this game. 17 of 30, 160 yards and an interception. Where this game was really decided was on the ground. Jordan Baugh, 12 carries for 46 yards, most of those being on a singular drive, and that was a pretty good drive for them. And he had the only Gator touchdown in this game. Jacoby Jackson also a pretty good game, at 7 carries for 39 yards. Eugene Wilson the second had an okay game, 2 carries for 3 yards. DJ Lagway, -8 yards on 8 carries. We already talked about the Miami Hurricanes rushing side of it. Now you see the receiving side of it. 4 different Miami receivers with 4 receptions. That is not anywhere close to the Gators. The Gators really spread the ball out more. Jalen Ball was the only one with 3 receptions. He had 9 yards on those receptions. Vernal Brown, game-losing drop. He had 2 receptions for 22 yards. Then Tony Livingston, 1 reception for 8 yards. Eugene Wilson, 1 reception for 7 yards. Strudevant, 1 reception for 5 yards. Jacoby Jackson, 1 reception for 4 yards. Hayden Hansen, 2 receptions for 4 yards. And TJ Abrams, 1 reception for 2 yards. Miami in this game used a lot of players. Not many receivers, but they played it pretty well. Chamar Brown, the leading receiver, 4 receptions for 53 yards. Elijah Lofton getting some use in this game, 4 receptions for 43 yards. Malachi Tony, 4 receptions for 40 yards. CJ Daniels, 4 receptions for 16, with which that would have been more. And 1 pass to Keelan Marion that went for 8 yards. Where you can really see this is where Miami's defense took over. Toure, 10 total tackles, 5 solo tackles, a sack, and a TFL. being the sack. Still a very good number. Wesley Bissaint also having 8 tackles, 3 solo tackles, and another TFL. Ruben Bain having his half sack, 7 tackles, 4 solo tackles, as well as an entire TFL. Uh, Akeem Mesidor, 4 tackles, 3 solo tackles, another half sack. Marquise Lightfoot having his own sack. Jacoby Thomas having his own sack. This defense played super well in this game. Compared to Florida defense, 1 sack and 4 TFLs with 74 total tackles and 38 solo tackles. The more you think about it, this is not the amount of tackles you want is lower because that means that you played less offense. Because your defense was actually able to stop them quicker. On kick returns, Marion had 1 for 19 yards. Malachi Tony had 1 for 14 yards. Carter Davis had a very good field goal, a 53-yarder, to actually take a 10-point lead against the Gators, which was a very, very fun field goal to watch. Dylan Joyce had decent time punting. Tommy Doman, 1 touchback, 7 punts, 332 yards. If you can't tell, I am being very biased here. I am so happy about how this game turns out. Oh my. Uh, like, I don't like the Gators by any means. I don't dislike them as much because I have a lot of friends at UF, but I don't like them. So seeing them really get dominated by Miami, it was nice. It was very nice to see. But yeah, guys, thank you guys so much for watching my week 4 recap of the college football season. Let me know what you guys thought of this video down below. And yeah, I believe they're in green and yellow. And DJ out. I'll see you all in the next one.